Easy guys, welcome back to the lab, where today's terrible experiment has technically already happened once. Dinosaurs ruled the Earth for 165 million years. That's 550 times longer than humans have existed. Then, an asteroid the size of a city showed up, and that was that. But what if they got a second chance? A clean slate, a fresh ecosystem, no asteroid. I had to know, so I loaded up Spore. Downloaded a Sporecast of 150 dinosaur species from the community into my creature folder and built them a new world. I called it Dinotopia. Like all great civilizations in Spore, the experiment begins in a tide pool. We started eating meat, growing, until he showed up. Was our dinosaur going to be the introduction sequence to our first parts upgrade? No, he was. We had spikes. I tested our creature against another predator. If we could just avoid its jaws and bite at its exposed flanks. No, we needed more. We found a mate and began evolving. In the interest of scientific authenticity, I designed an early ancestor to the early dinosaurs. Something lobe-finned, 2 fin segments, the largest mouth the editor would allow to make consumption of meat chunks easier. 2 spikes to snag floating chunks and funnel them towards the mouth. An early filtration system, if you will. 4 flagella, an early blueprint of the first protolimb. Eyes, scientifically unnecessary at this scale, but important for parasocial bonding with the player. And the obligatory spore tail spike for anything rude enough to attack from behind. We named it the Chlorosaur, Latin for green lizard. Clearly, I was confused about this because our cell was brown, for reasons I shall not later explain. Newly evolved, we returned to fight our previous foe. Our jaws parried, but the spikes reached through their defenses, and they gave up their meat chunks. With evolution in full effect and our power increasing, we fed on herbivores easily enough. But heavily spiked creatures were a different problem entirely. We needed a solution. I decided upon speed. There was a creature carrying the jet part. As always, in just about every Spore video I make, they were fast. Too fast. Fortunately, a larger predator had opinions about that. With the jet liberated, we just had to collect the part without getting eaten in the process. Nice. We called for a mate and added the jet. We were now fast and spiked. We were essentially a spear. We had 2 spikes though, so perhaps a fork. No, we're underwater. A trident. After acquiring cilia, we evolved again, replacing our flagella with proper fins as we made our push towards limbs. As we emerged from the water, we were immediately flanked by cells with a proboscises. Proboscises? But 2 could play at that game. We evolved once more, removing the large jaws, replacing it with a feeding straw. Extra spikes added to the protolimbs, our first claws so to speak, more trident than ever. A high-speed underwater mosquito, a high-velocity kidney extractor, an underwater organ siphon. Hunting. Revenge came swiftly. 2 chlorosaurs, 1 of whatever that thing was. We had avenged ourselves. After repeated playthroughs in Spore, one thing I've noticed is these blue-jaw creatures are always easy prey. A kiss of death from the chlorosaur. With this much prey around, it was an absolute smoothie fest, though our proboscis, it turned out, was useless for eating the chunks. A design oversight we noted for later. We tried new drinks on the menu. These electric smoothies had a real kick to them, like high-voltage brain freeze. Even the large spiked creatures posed little threat now. We had evolved considerably. The limited threat from the cells around us meant only one thing. Our time in the tide pool was running out. We fed on as many meat smoothies as possible until our time was nigh, pausing briefly amongst what appeared to be a smoothie nursery, and then, as if seeing the circle of life for the first time, became self-aware. We made our ascension towards land. Some spikes were shed as our front protolimbs regressed, but some remained as new hind legs formed, a nod to our past. Our bodies morphed into an elongated, unbalanced feeding tube. After calling our kin to land, we began feeding on a dead tonsa, which appeared to have had an unfortunate accident right outside the nest. Lunch. We set forth eagerly to find the other dinosaur species seeded into this world before the experiment began. The full roster, 150 species. We found subject Ruck. Not a dinosaur. Perhaps there weren't enough early creature archetypes in our creature list. A reasonable hypothesis. We began eating, hoping for more dinosaurs later on. For now though, protein was required. Next, Workensondi, also not a dinosaur. We ate. This isn't the experiment I had in mind. All non-dinosaur subjects must be purged from the experiment. Science demands it. We scouted the landscape, solitary, hunting, just as we had in the tide pool, an early evolutionary trait, preserved. We found little of note, so headed back. Returning to the nest, we found a single egg. We considered an egg smoothie. We just needed to find a way to insert the proboscis through a small hole in the shell. Newton's apple. Where did you come from? An interesting development. It's evolution time. You call that an egg? This is an egg. We gained a new carnivorous mouth, eyes for, well, sight, and for a more balanced stance, a new limb, a tail. Looking considerably more dinosaur-like now, arms were next. Hearts limited here, but beggars can't be choosers. And yes, the chlorosaur should be green. Yes, please leave all complaints with your screen, where I shall take them into careful consideration. Next up, a goob. Sounds like an insult. Also not a dinosaur. Food. Our new upgrades had produced a lethal strike, capable of dropping early life forms in a single blow. Only a fellow dinosaur could withstand its might, and these were not that. With all the surplus protein we had been accumulating, our brains grew, as did our hunger. We roamed from nest to nest looking for our own kind. What had started as an evolutionary experiment retreading the path of the dinosaurs had become an ecological genocide. Ethnic cleansing. We returned to the nest just in time to witness a chlorosaur ejecting a supersonic egg from its rear end. Let's get an action replay on that one, science fans. Pow! That baby's gonna have a complicated start. Nevertheless, evolution beckoned. New eyes for... this is getting old now. Faster feet, and the early beginnings of a brow ridge forming. Upon waking, some kind of disagreement had occurred at the nest, and everybody left. But no one knew why, as no one had learnt language yet. We recruited the last remaining chlorosaur into the pack, a more efficient hunting strategy, group dynamics. This didn't last long. Our fellow chlorosaur pack member, as if by divine miracle, hovered for a short while, then fell over and died. RIP. The world wasn't ready. First in the fossil record, last to be appreciated. Alone once more, we set out to find our kin, who had apparently nested elsewhere. After finding the new nest and replacing our fallen comrade, we set out to cleanse the world of non-dinosaurs and took another step towards sentience, expanding the pack. Then, something loomed on the horizon. An epic. Technically, it was kind of dinosaurish, which complicated things, but it was positioned dangerously close to the nest, a potential problem for future chlorosaurs. Killing epics was a task left for only the most seasoned creatures. We kept our distance. We hunted a nearby nest of birdies instead, but fate had other plans. The epic, apparently drawn by the smell of chaos, closed in and helped itself to one of our kills. Best to keep our distance. Survival probability briefly in question. Then the meteors fell, marking the halfway point of the creature stage. Not Chicxulub though, that was an alternate timeline. We had survived. With epics prowling our nesting grounds, we were anticipating a fight. We returned to the nest to evolve. Longer mouth, sharper, grasping claws, faster feet, more horns. We set out once more to cleanse anything non-dinosaur until we ascended again. And whatever was going on in the background here, pure science. Stronger than we had ever been, and yet a quiet frustration was growing. Out of 150 seeded dinosaurs from my Sporecast creature collection, Spore had shown us almost nothing. Spore clearly favors its own Maxis creatures. Do you think that's intentional or just bad RNG? Leave your thoughts in the comments, but our resolve hardened accordingly. Anything non-dinosaur would be slain. That ethos held for some time as we went from nest to nest, purging anything that wasn't a terrible lizard, until we found Baryonyx. Could it be true? We befriended them immediately. A fellow dinosaur, actually present in our world. Spore had come through. Just. The Baryonyx seemed equally curious about the Chlorosaurs. We may even have shared the same mouth. A similar ancestor, perhaps. Next, we found another nest of Chlorosaurs. It appeared our nest was not the only social collective of our species. Perhaps an early disagreement had divided our ancestors. We moved on, eager to see what else the ecosystem had produced. Then, while cleansing a nest of wubble, we spotted more of our own kind. A Jurassic World Atrociraptor. Divisive franchise, but undeniably a dinosaur. We befriended them and brought them into the fold. After a particularly long cleansing session, we had accumulated enough parts to evolve. Our form was long overdue an update. Something more dinosaur. First, the neck, a strong kink, non-negotiable. The head needed to be larger to support a crushing bite force, which meant the arms had to be smaller to compensate for the additional frontal weight. Basic load distribution. Legs, considerably more muscular, the physics demanded it. The body was coming together. The mouth, however, was entirely another matter. Several options were trialed, discarded, and trialed again. The mouth would make or break this creature, and we were not prepared to compromise. We began bulking out the nose architecture, briefly consulting the Dark Injection mod's newer parts before returning on reflection to Spore's vanilla catalog. A single nose horn was added as a final flourish. Then, the brow. The eyes needed a ridge, something with weight, something that communicated intent. We cycled through the options, but nothing was working. I felt the brow was too flat, the whole face just too passive. This was unacceptable. We kept sifting. The ridge still needed definition. The part we were using was too broad and couldn't be made thinner. We needed something sharper. A razor from the Dark Injection mod. We set to work. After considerable trial and error, something started to emerge, ridges forming along the skull, the brow steeper, beginning to carry some genuine weight. We found a pair of horns which reminded me of something like a Carnotaurus and began shaping them into the forehead. This was getting somewhere. Improvised nostrils, then the eyes. Many were trialed, none were quite right. We kept looking. This was not a decision to rush. Eventually, we settled on the most lizard-like candidate available. It would have to do. Teeth were added to the upper jaw, more aggressive than Spore's standard issue, with a slight overbite that felt anatomically honest, depending on whether you believe that dinosaurs actually had an overbite at all. And then, of course, it needed to be green. Finally. When we finally hatched, we looked completely different. Some Chlorosaurs panicked and ran. Then, an epic arrived, the inevitable conclusion. The Chlorosaurs defended the nest, attacking from behind, keeping the target spinning, trading blows in rotation. Despite a noticeable cooldown period, an epic was easily capable of one-shotting a creature. Before long, we suffered heavy losses. But we had done enough. At half health, the epic retreated, apparently reassessing its priorities. The nest had held. I'd love to hear your worst epic encounter in the comments. We gathered our numbers and continued hunting. Anything non-dinosaur was erased. Then a wild, epic Diplodocus was spotted on the horizon, causing considerable havoc. We even lost a Chlorosaur in the encounter, dinosaur on dinosaur. Sauropods are hardcore. Sadly, that was all the dinosaurs Spore had to offer. Out of 150 species, only a handful. But between the Chlorosaurs, the Baryonyx, the Atrociraptor, and one extremely aggressive Diplodocus, we had built something. Not what we planned, not even close, but a world of dinosaurs nonetheless. Just not quite the way we intended. Another failed experiment for the archives. We regret nothing. Before we go, a genuine thank you to my channel members. Lab partners help keep the experiments running. Knowing the lab stays open regardless of what the algorithm decides means I can actually experiment, which is supposed to be the whole point. Your support is not taken for granted. Until next time, goodbye.